America's 250th birthday, coming together in difficult times. At 250, the United States of America is halfway through its third century as a people and nation. America in the early 21st century is working through the American experiment. The experiment began in 1776. The question, can a people create a self-governing republic and avoid the verdicts of history? Self-government, a republic, or a democracy often ended in tyranny, the Roman Republic became the Roman Empire, or anarchy and civil war, the Greek city-states in the centuries before they were incorporated into the Roman Empire. 13 of the 14 British North American colonies took the political theories of the Enlightenment and put them to paper and practice. Radical ideas for the time period. That people are born with rights that came from God in a religious context or were natural to the human being in a secular context, could secure their liberty by creating a government that would protect their liberties. The radical idea that those people can successfully govern themselves and defy history by creating a system of government that would remain by the people, in the people, and for the people forever. At the end of its first century, America was a decade removed from the great test of that experiment, the Civil War. The Civil War answered the debate over the definition of union and who the people were. Would the experiment end in civil war? Could people come together and create a more perfect union? At the end of its second century, America had ended a chaotic and tumultuous period, from the election of John F. Kennedy in 1960 to the economic stagnation in the 1970s. The bicentennial in 1976 came at a time when America needed healing, harmony, and a reason to celebrate all that was good about America, celebrating the continuation of the American experiment at the end of the 20th century and beyond. I want to highlight people from the Revolutionary period who helped us create that union, and through difficult times give us examples of the spirit of America coming together to build a more perfect union. An America that can and does acknowledge imperfection, because we are human beings, mortal and imperfect. To quote James Madison from Federalist Flag number 51, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. In acknowledging imperfections, however, I think it is important to remind ourselves of the good. I think it is unfortunate today that it is popular to dwell on the negative, trendy to put down America, popular to treat our nation as if it was never good or can't be good. Sometimes it seems any expression of patriotism or love of our nation is treated with some disbelief or questioning why you would think that. America is good. I am personally patriotic. I love America, its people, its land, its ideals. Along with the bad stories, there are many good stories over 2.5 centuries that sought to create a nation that lived up to its ideals, truth, justice, and the American way. There are many stories of people coming together to navigate tough times to create a better tomorrow. Simple patriotism, a love of the ideals and people that have endured into a third century. This past week I've reminded you of the good. The World Cup is going on. The world is coming here. I'm a fan of social media, and so I'm on it. And there have been many videos of people from different countries around the world, awestruck by what they see. One video creator was shocked that high schools he visited in Texas had large American football stadiums. Is this filled every game? He asked, astonished. One creator was surprised at how friendly everyone was and willing to help him navigate a foreign country. One video creator was thrilled that a barbecue restaurant worker helped him dive into an American-style barbecue. The main lesson, you get in there with your hands and get messy. Many of the videos expressed how different, quote unquote, what they had been told was from reality. At the head of the Continental Army, George Washington held the patriot cause together when it might have broken apart. Washington exemplified steadiness as chaos and conflict raged around him. He led soldiers from different colonies, many of whom still thought of themselves first as members of their own colony, rather than as part of a single nation. He managed the uneasy relationship between Continental regulars and local militia. He worked with Congress, colonial governments, transitioning to state governments, officers with strong personalities, and eventually foreign allies. The famous Crossing of the Delaware painting symbolizes Washington's steadiness. In the painting, he stands tall and strong as a rock as the Patriot rowboats crossed the icy Delaware River. There were defeats and shortages and low morale, moments when the Army itself seemed close to collapse. Washington's steadiness preserved unity in a cause that could have easily come apart. His example became even more powerful at the end of the war, when Washington resigned his commission and returned to private life. He demonstrated the revolution was not being fought so one victorious commander could make himself master of the country. Many Roman generals' path to power was through that route. But like the ancient Cincinnatus, Washington gave up power for private life. He showed that power had to serve the common good. That act helped unite Americans around Republican self-governing principles and made Washington more than a military hero. It made him a model of leadership, restrained by duty. Deborah Sampson, of English descent, was born into poverty in Massachusetts in 1760 and grew up in circumstances that gave her little reason to expect fame or public recognition. Part of her youth was spent in indentured service, and as a young woman, she supported herself by working as a teacher and a weaver. Her early life was marked by hardship and labor. Yet when the Revolutionary War entered its final year, she chose a path few women of her time could imagine. In May of 1782, Sampson disguised herself as a man and enlisted in the Continental Army under the name Robert Shirtliff. Serving as light infantry in New York's Hudson River Valley, she was involved in skirmishes with Loyalist raiders still fighting the war after Cornwallis's surrender at Yorktown the previous October, 1781. One of the more interesting later accounts of her service was removing a musket ball from her own thigh rather than having her identity revealed. She exemplified courage and service, participating in the larger struggle of fighting for ideals. In choosing to serve, she demonstrated devotion to a common cause could lead ordinary people to do extraordinary acts of courage. As Americans, we can show courage and service to a cause greater than ourselves. Peter Salem, a Massachusetts colonist of African descent, took part in the American struggle for independence from the war's earliest days. When the crisis with Britain turned into open fighting in 1775, he joined the Massachusetts militia and entered a conflict that would demand endurance, courage, and cooperation from ordinary people, as well as famous leaders. At Bunker Hill, Continental soldiers stood together against repeated British assaults. Salem served in line with other Patriot soldiers. In moments like that, the cause of independence depended on men willing to hold their ground beside one another as the battle raged. His example reminds us that the revolution was sustained by more than famous founders and commanding generals. It was also sustained by ordinary soldiers who helped carry the burden of the struggle through service and sacrifice. As Americans in a time of crisis, we can unite around a common purpose and work to create a more perfect union. James Armistead, born enslaved in Virginia around 1760, showed how ordinary individuals could contribute meaningfully under the hardest personal conditions during the Revolutionary struggle. In 1781, as the war reached its decisive phase in Virginia, Armistead gained permission from his master to support the Patriot side. He crossed into British lines posing as a runaway, then worked as a double agent, feeding intelligence back to the Americans. His report on British troop movements and plans proved especially valuable in the campaign that led to Yorktown. Working at great personal risk, Armistead helped provide the information that allowed the Continental Army to anticipate British actions and tighten the trap around Cornwallis. He carried out this dangerous service while still legally enslaved, sharing the uncertainties and pressures of the final campaigns, along with free soldiers and scouts. After the victory at Yorktown, Armistead's contributions were recognized. In 1787, the Virginia legislature granted him freedom based on his wartime service. He later added Lafayette to his name to honor the French general who supported his manumission. He lived the rest of his life as a free farmer, raised a family, and eventually received a pension. Armistead's actions remind us of the revolutionary cause drew strength from people across all stations of life. In the final campaigns, when unity and perseverance mattered, ordinary individuals stepped forward to advance the shared fight for liberty and self-government. His story, like so many others, shows how commitment to the larger cause helped sustain the American effort through its toughest tests. Joseph Plum Martin offers one of the clearest windows into the life of the ordinary Continental soldier. As a common enlisted soldier who entered the revolutionary struggle as a young man and remained in loyal service till its end. Because he later wrote about his experiences in vivid detail, his life allows us to see the war not only from the level of grand strategy and political declarations, but from the ground where common soldiers fought and died. Martin joined the Patriot cause in 1776, lying about his age, 15. He was mustered out in June of 1783, 7 years later, entering the war as a boy, leaving as a man of 21. For men like him, the Revolutionary was not simply a matter of dramatic moments and stirring words. It was marching, drilling, shivering, going hungry, and continuing when conditions were discouraging. The war demanded as much stamina as courage. It demanded the willingness to endure long stretches of hardship without knowing when relief would come or whether the cause itself would succeed. His recollections are especially valuable because they reveal just how much of the revolutionary struggle depended on persistence. Martin wrote of cold winters, poor clothing, weak rations, and the constant frustrations of army life. He knew what it meant to be tired, underfed, and uncertain, yet remain in service. Through his eyes, the revolutionary appeared not only as a contest of ideals, but also the test of endurance. The army survived because men kept showing up for duty, kept obeying orders, and kept holding together when it would have been easier to quit. This is what makes Martin's life so important to the larger cause, the story of unity in hard times. The Patriot cause was held together by ordinary soldiers who accepted the burdens of war day after day. Men like Joseph Plum Martin made unity practical. They turned broad ideals into practical reality. They stood in camp, on the march, and in line, not because they were guaranteed comfort or fame, but because they believed the cause was worth continued sacrifice. From Martin's story, we learn the importance of patience and struggle. Through patiently enduring the shared hardships that overcame the crisis of independence and forged a new nation with the ideals of truth, justice, and liberty. Elizabeth Freeman, known as Mem Bet later in life, was born into slavery around 1744 in New York and later brought to Sheffield, Massachusetts. By the early 1780s, after decades of hard work, she tested the promises of the new Massachusetts state constitution. That document, shaped by the revolutionary struggle, declared that all people were born free and equal with natural rights to life, liberty, and property. In 1781, with the help of a local lawyer, Mem Bet sued for her freedom in the county court. She argued that the new state constitution's language made her continued enslavement illegal. The jury agreed, and she became one of the first black women in Massachusetts to win freedom through the courts. Her case helped set a precedent that contributed to the end of slavery in the state shortly afterwards. After gaining her freedom, Elizabeth Freedom took the name of Mem Bet and worked as a paid domestic servant. She raised a family, lived independently, and earned the respect of her community. She lived until 1829, long enough to see the new nation continue wrestling with the ideals she had helped enforce in her own life. The revolutionary generation had declared bold principles in their fight against British rule. Elizabeth Freeman, like many others, took those principles seriously and used the legal system to claim the rights that the revolution had proclaimed. Her court action, alongside the efforts of free and enslaved people across the new nation, showed how the shared commitment to self-government and rule of law could gradually bring greater consistency to the ideals of liberty. Ordinary citizens acting with determination and through lawful means helped turn revolutionary words into practical progress. In the spring of 1778, as Washington's army struggled to survive and reorganize at Valley Forge, help came from beyond the Continental ranks. General Washington wanted the Oneida and Tuscarora warriors with the army, because they could do what the Continental soldiers often could not do as well: scout and move quickly. These Native American warriors helped provide the Continental Army help when they needed it most. The Oneida who came to Valley Forge entered a war that had already forced Native nations into difficult and dangerous choices. Most Native peoples did not support the Patriot cause, and many had strong reasons to distrust colonial expansion. Yet the Oneida had aligned themselves with the Americans, and by 1778 they were willing to send warriors to assist Washington directly. Their presence at Valley Forge showed that the struggle for independence was not being carried by the colonies alone. It was sustained in part by allies who believed that British power posed dangers of its own, and who chose to cooperate in a common military effort. About 50 Oneida and Tuscarora warriors reached Valley Forge in May of 1778. Almost immediately, they were put to use. Within days, they joined the reconnaissance and movement associated with Lafayette's expedition to Bering Hill. There, when British forces tried to cut off Lafayette's command, the Oneida helped provide delaying action that contributed to the American withdrawal back towards safety. Their service at Valley Forge captures one of the clearest truths of the Revolutionary era. Unity in hard times often depends on cooperation among people who are not identical in background, culture, or long-term interests. The Oneida came as allies, and for a crucial moment, they worked in concert with Washington's army. Their service formed part of the common effort that helped keep the Patriot cause alive. That alliance came at a cost. The Oneida could not remain indefinitely with the army near Philadelphia because their own homes and families in New York were vulnerable to attack from British forces and Native enemies allied with the Crown. Many of the warriors returned home within weeks because the war threatened their communities as well. Even so, their brief service at Valley Forge remained significant. It reminds us that the revolution was aided by allies whose contributions were timely. Bernardo de Galvez reminds us that the American struggle for independence was strengthened by cooperation from many people and communities. As governor of Spanish Louisiana, Galvez occupied a strategic position in the Gulf South at a time when the war with Britain had widened into a larger international conflict. From that position, he became an important part of the broader effort to help weaken British power and improve the chances of American success. At first, his support came through practical aid, gunpowder, and supplies through Louisiana and the Mississippi River Valley, strengthened the Continental Army, and complicated Britain's effort to crush the rebellion. In that sense, Galvez became part of the wider network of people who helped sustain the revolutionary cause. His role became even more important after Spain entered the war against Britain. Galvez moved from indirect support to direct military action, leading campaigns against the British in the Gulf Coast. He captured Baton Rouge in 1779, Mobile in 1780, and Pensacola in 1781. These victories mattered because they weakened British control in West Florida, forced Britain to defend the wider front, and reduced its ability to concentrate power against the American rebellion. While Washington held the Continental Army together in the North, Galvez was helping put pressure on the British from the South. His story shows that unity in hard times is not always limited by language, nationality, or political tradition. The American cause drew strength from people who were not themselves citizens of the future United States, but who nonetheless played an important role in making independence possible. Galvez served the Spanish crown and acted from Spanish interests, yet his action became part of the larger struggle that allowed the new nation to succeed. People can come together and build a self-governing republic whose lives live up to the ideals of truth, justice, and the American way. As you look back on the revolutionary era of America's 250th birthday, the clearest lesson is that the nation was not built by one kind of person alone. It was built by leaders and soldiers, men and women, free and enslaved people seeking liberty, local communities and allies who chose to stand with the American cause in times of uncertainty. George Washington held the army together and the larger cause came together when it might have fallen apart. Deborah Sampson showed courage and sacrifice in serving something greater than herself. Peter Salem and James Armistead Lafayette remind us that Black Americans were part of the struggle for liberty and independence. Joseph Plum Martin represents the thousands, tens of thousands of ordinary soldiers whose endurance kept the war effort alive. Elizabeth Freeman showed that the promises of liberty could be carried into law in daily life. United demonstrated that even in a fractured world, alliances and cooperation can sustain a common cause. Taken together, these lives tell us something important about the spirit of America. Unity in hard times is built when different people bring their strengths in the service of a larger purpose. Some lead, some fight, some use the law, some offer aid and alliance, but all become part of the larger effort. That may be one of the best lessons to remember in 2026. The American founding was not only a matter of ideals written on paper, it was also a matter of people who chose to work together when circumstances were difficult, when the future was uncertain, and when sacrifice was required. They did not build a perfect nation, but they did build a durable one. Through courage, perseverance, service, and cooperation, they helped create a union strong enough to endure into a third century. On America's 250th birthday, that is worth remembering. In every generation, the nation faces tests, and in every generation, its strength depends on whether people can come together, work together, and hold fast to the cause of liberty, self-government, and a more perfect union.